Taking you live now to Brisbane, where the Prime Minister is speaking.
The extraordinary effort that you've undertaken over recent months and indeed going back to last year in order to return this seat to Labor hands. Because we know that the local MP here has held up, personally held up, as the Greens Party housing spokesperson, held up investments like this, has held up investments in the Housing Australia Future Fund, held up the Help to Buy scheme, which is about shared equity in home ownership, held up the Build to Rent scheme that's about private rental properties that will result in well over 6 figures of houses being built according to the Property Council, according to the industry. This project here is Australia Future Fund, and after Jim speaks, Rebecca's going to speak about why that is so important. 82 homes here for Australians, 50 of them being social homes, public housing, 32 of them being essential workers, affordable homes, making sure that the people who work in the 4 hospitals around this site where we're located here will have the opportunity to live closer to where they work. This will make an enormous difference. Labor has some $43 billion in the largest ever investment in housing through our Homes for Australia plan. We support increased housing supply as being the key, whether that be increased numbers of social housing, whether that be increased numbers of affordable housing, increased private rentals or increased home ownership. We have a comprehensive plan that doesn't just deal with demand, that deals with supply. We particularly want to help first home buyers to get into home ownership, and that's what our 5% deposit will do. Instead of people struggling to get to that 20% figure, meanwhile seeing it perhaps further and further away while they're trying to save but paying off someone else's mortgage, what they will be able to do is to pay off their own mortgage with just a 5% deposit by the government, making sure that they don't need that mortgage insurance, dealing through financial institutions in the same way that other home buyers do, but doing it in a way with that government guarantee. Now, we've helped some 150,000 Australian families into homes already, their first homes. Of that, the default is 3 out of 150,000. That shows how successful this program has been. And together with the 100,000 homes that we will build, are based upon the South Australian model for first home buyers. Again, building homes in multi-dwelling units largely, where a portion of those homes is set aside just for first home buyers, so they're not competing with investors, making sure that they can get into the housing market. Labor understands that having a secure roof over your head is the key to opportunity, over whether your kids can get a better education, whether your health care is looked after, whether you have that security of being able to seek employment or seek better employment going forward. But the other plan we have, of course, is to make sure that we have more tradies to build these homes. So our free TAFE, 600,000 free TAFE places, many of them in construction and electrical. Our $10,000 incentives for people undertaking those apprenticeships going forward as well. I've met so many young people and people retraining around the country in TAFE, doing free TAFE, doing their apprenticeships, making a difference going forward. And we know that in 2 areas, free TAFE, gone under a coalition government. Housing Australia Future Fund, gone under a coalition government. Just a return from the same people who didn't bother to have a housing minister for most of the time that they were in office during that 10 long wasted years. Australia deserves better. Labor is running in this campaign under Building Australia's Future, and there's nowhere more important when we talk about building than building homes for future Australians. I'll hand to Jim and then we'll hear from Rebecca.
Thanks very much, PM. Thanks, Rebecca and your team, for having us here today, and thanks to Renee Coffey as well. If we want to build more homes in Australia, we need to elect Renee Coffey to the National Parliament. If we want to cut taxes for every Australian taxpayer, we need to elect Renee Coffey to the Parliament. 99,000 taxpayers in this electorate of Griffith will get 2 tax cuts if Labor is elected, or they'll get tax hikes from the Coalition if Peter Dutton becomes the Prime Minister. That's the difference here in Griffith for 99,000 taxpayers. Now, only one party is going to this election with a credible, costed and coherent economic plan, and it's the Labor Party. And housing is at the absolute core of our responsible economic management. It goes to the choices at this election. Under Labor and this Prime Minister, more homes, more tradies and smaller deposits, or under Peter Dutton and the Coalition, fewer homes, higher prices and cuts to TAFE and tradies. And so that's the choice when it comes to housing. The choice when it comes to the cost of living is higher wages, lower taxes and ongoing help with the cost of living under this Prime Minister, or higher taxes, lower wages and no ongoing...
And this is where we leave our viewers on the ABC TV main channel. If you'd like to continue watching, you can switch over to the ABC News channel.
Albanese or risk from Peter Dutton. The choice is between responsible economic management being provided by this Labor government or secret costs and savage cuts, which will come if Peter Dutton is elected Prime Minister on Saturday. Now, yesterday, Katie Gallagher and I released our detailed costings for the election. It was the third costings update, if you include the PFO, in the last 5 weeks or so. And what the costings show is that responsible economic management is a defining feature of this Albanese Labor government. A $208 billion turnaround in the budget, 2 surpluses, a smaller deficit this year, $100 billion in savings, banking the majority of the upward revision to revenue. All of this is about cleaning up the mess that we inherited when it came to the budget. Now, it is now long past time for Peter Dutton to come clean on his cuts. Peter Dutton can't find the $600 billion he needs for his nuclear reactors without coming after Medicare again like he did when he was the Health Minister. By our count, they've made it about $62 billion in commitments. That's before you get to the $600 billion of nuclear reactors. Peter Dutton needs to come clean on his secret costs and his savage cuts, which will make Australians worse off. That is what we are calling on Peter Dutton to do today. Come clean on your cuts, not after the election, but well before the election, so that people can understand how much worse off they'll be under Peter Dutton when he comes after Medicare again. He comes after housing by abolishing the Housing Australia Future Fund. He comes after free TAFE and all of the things which is so important to our economic plan. Now, tomorrow we will get new numbers for inflation. The progress that we've made together on inflation is a powerful demonstration of the progress that Australians have made together more broadly on the economy. We've got inflation substantially down. Real wages are growing again. Unemployment is low. We've got the debt down. Growth is rebounding solidly in our economy, and interest rates have started to come down as well. So we've made a lot of progress on inflation. We've made a lot of progress on the economy, but we know that there's more work to do because people are still under pressure and the global economic environment is so uncertain. In volatile times in the global economy, we don't need a volatile leader like Peter Dutton. Peter Dutton presents an unacceptable risk to household budgets, the national budget and the national economy in uncertain times. We are providing responsible economic management, stable, considered, methodical economic management. You saw that in our costings and you've seen that in the progress that we're making on inflation as well, and we'll see more of that tomorrow. Now, the only way to ensure that Australia continues to have stability and responsibility is to give Labor a majority on Saturday. That's why these Queensland seats are so important. It's why Renee Coffey is so important as well. Last point I'd make is about Queensland and the role of Queensland in this election. We've seen Peter Dutton's true colours through the cyclone and through this election campaign, and they're not maroon. They're not maroon. He might be from here, but he's not for Queensland. This Prime Minister is not from Queensland, but he is for Queensland. And the fact that he comes here again and again to make these crucial investments in housing in Queensland, to give every Queensland taxpayer a tax cut, to make sure that we're not doing what Peter Dutton wants to do, which is to build a nuclear reactor in the suburbs of his local community. These are some of the things that are at stake in this election in Queensland, but also around Australia. We're going to hear from Rebecca and then happy to take some questions.
Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca Olkers. I'm the CEO of Brisbane Housing Company. I'm really thrilled to be here today because this particular building is 82 units of social and affordable housing. It's going to be life-changing, literally life-changing for the people who live here. As you can see, it's a fantastic location, absolutely key location for hospitals in close proximity. There will be key workers that live in this area who are absolutely unable to live affordably in this area, but with the development of this particular building, they will be able to live and also put food on the table, send their kids to their excursions. Make no mistake, buildings like this make a huge difference to people's lives. And so the vulnerable people who are waiting on the public housing wait list will be eligible for accommodation in this building, as will key workers. And we're talking about people who are working in our hospitals. We're talking about the people who look after our children in childcare. We're talking about the people who look after our parents in aged care. We're talking about the baristas. All of these people will find affordable accommodation in buildings like this. And I want to be really clear. Things like the Housing Australia Future Fund are vital to actually providing social and affordable housing at scale. I cannot overstate that enough. Federal involvement in housing is hugely important. The role of the states together with the federal government, hugely important. I've been in social and affordable housing for 20 years. Brisbane Housing Company has built and managed affordable housing for over 20 years. And buildings like this are what make all the difference. Supply is what makes the difference, and we have to do this in a way that can actually be scaled. This particular building, it's not funded by the Housing Australia Future Fund, but funded under a very similar state model under the HIF, exactly the same mechanism as the HAF. We're very big advocates of the HAF, and we need to see more buildings like this done because, honestly, as Australians, our Australian people deserve it. And I'm really thrilled to see the federal leadership in this arena. Thank you.
Prime Minister. Prime Minister, do you give weight to the assessment of S&P, and is Australia's AAA credit rating at risk?
I'll ask Jim to comment as well, but one of the things that we have done is put our costings out there. The other side haven't. And the other thing that we've done is turn a $78 billion deficit into a $22 billion surplus, followed it up with another surplus, followed it up with halving the deficit. And in the costings that we've released yesterday, we've actually made the budget bottom line better. We've improved the budget bottom line by $207 billion since we came to office. We have improved the bottom line by that. We've saved some $60 billion in interest payments as well, the Treasurer.
Thanks PM and Chloe. I think the ratings agencies should be very reassured by the fact that we finished this election campaign with the budget in a stronger position than when we started the election campaign. We've made about $10 billion worth of commitments. $4 billion of those were in the budget or the PFO, and the other $6 billion have been more than offset by the budget improvements that Katie Gallagher and I announced on the other side of the river yesterday. So that should be very reassuring for the ratings agencies. It's a source of considerable pride to Labor that we got the stable AAA from the three ratings agencies under the last Labor government, and we have maintained the ability to manage the budget and the economy in the most responsible way. Now, there is a contrast here. Our opponents won't tell Australians where the cuts are coming from. Peter Dutton has said on multiple occasions now he'll tell you after the election, which is obviously unacceptable. They have secret costs and savage cuts, and they should come clean. Because if the ratings agencies would be worried about anything, they'd be worried about the fact that so far we think the Liberals and Nationals have made about $62 billion in commitments. They haven't told the Australian people what they'd cut to pay for that. They haven't told the Australian people how they'd pay for their nuclear reactors. We're managing the budget in a responsible way. The proof of that is in the costings that we released yesterday. We call on the Coalition to come clean on their secret costs and their savage cuts.
What do you mean that they'd be beside themselves, Prime Minister?
Thanks very much.
You said last night on 7:30 the S&P...
Yeah, well, I do interviews. I know that I did the 7:30 report last night. I know that Peter Dutton is courageously showing strength by doing Paul Murray tonight for the second time in the campaign. I'm sure that will be a rigorous cross-examination of their costings. The truth is there's a big difference between the two sides. Our side have put out our costings. We had a budget on March 25th. We then had the pre-election fiscal outlook, and then we released our costings yesterday.
Prime Minister, you had a nice walk in Cabramatta with your Labor candidate Tule yesterday.
I'm not frightened of getting out there and talking to people in environments that aren't controlled, and I must say it's very warm, the reception that Tule and I got, and that's not surprising because Tule's from that community, she's of that community, and she'll make a fantastic representative for the people of Fowler.
I haven't even asked my question yet. An organisation she founded received about 30 grand worth of grants a few years ago. Those grants have now been referred to the NAC. Do you know, was there a conflict of interest? The grants were received while she worked for the former Fowler MP. Do you know if a conflict of interest was declared, and is it difficult having that sort of hanging over a campaign in a key seat?
No, in spite of the sort of dirt unit work that the Liberal Party will do, Tule is someone of extraordinary capacity and integrity. She has been involved in not-for-profit community-based organisations in her local community for a long period of time. She will make an extraordinary local member.
Prime Minister, you're in the home city of your rival. He says that Labor has run a campaign to suggest that he's in trouble in Dickson, and he's not in trouble in Dickson at all. Can I ask you, are you going to Dickson today, one? And two, what do you say about his accusation? Is he in trouble? Might Labor win his seat?
Labor can certainly win what is the most marginal seat in Queensland. The maths are there. If we get the same swing that we got in the 2022 election, Ailey France will be elected the member for Dickson this Saturday. Peter Dutton has gone away from his electorate, not to it. Ailey France is committed to that electorate. What's more, Peter Dutton is now saying that he wants a nuclear reactor in that electorate as well. I think that Peter Dutton, a key point in this election campaign, where he showed a level of arrogance that was extraordinary, was very early on when he, in an interview, said that he wanted to live in Kirribilli House, a Queensland Prime Minister who wanted to not live in the national capital but preferred Sydney to living in the Prime Minister's residence in the Lodge. I think that will go down very badly in his electorate, and we'll continue to campaign. We're campaigning certainly very hard in Dickson.
Do you worry about the rise of right-wing minor parties, and do you think that Peter Dutton's recent comments in recent days have been an attempt to try stoke their voters over towards Liberals?
Peter Dutton has spent a political career stoking division, trying to turn Australians against each other, trying to start culture wars. I'm not interested in culture wars. I'm interested in fighting for Australians.
Was the SNP wrong, Prime Minister? Was the SNP wrong, Prime Minister?
Prime Minister, last night you said, quote, they must have been beside themselves, whoever wrote that report. Now, if Peter Dutton questioned an independent expert in the way you did last night, you would be going full troppo and saying he was MAGA or Trump. So why is it okay for you to question the independence of experts? And Treasurer Jim Chalmers, if you lose Australia's AAA rating, will that disqualify you from being Australia's next Prime Minister?
Thanks, Latika. What I was doing last night was pointing out a fact that we have been responsible economic managers. And if you compare, and if you compare what our position was of 2 budget surpluses, compare that after we, under the Labor government, was what delivered the AAA credit ratings.
What is talking about your future record, Ian? It's talking about the future, not yesterday's surplus.
When you finish. AAA credit ratings delivered by the Labor Party. We're very proud of that. And what we've also delivered is responsible economic management. This bloke here is the only treasurer in a long period of time who has delivered 2 budget surpluses. Right here, a proud Queenslander, and I'm proud of the effort that we have done. So if you compare the 2 budget surpluses and also the halving of the deficit, then we are indeed very proud of our record.
Was the S&P wrong, Prime Minister?
The point that the PM's making is the same point that Katie and I made yesterday, the same point that I've made again today. The ratings agency should be very pleased, very reassured with the progress that we've made in the budget in just 3 years in office. When we came to office...
The AAA credit rating in your next term if you get one?
There would be no reason to lose the AAA if Labor is re-elected, because we've shown not just an enthusiasm for responsible economic management, but we've got a good record of responsible economic management. I invite you to recall what the budget looked like on the day that we came to office. I remember the Treasury Secretary coming around to my place in Logan on the Sunday after the election. There were huge deficits as far as the eye can see. We turned 2 of them into surpluses. We halved this year's deficit. We went through a whole election campaign, and at the end of the election campaign, the budget was in better nick than at the start of the election campaign. And so the point the PM's making, the same point that I make today and I made yesterday and Katie made yesterday, is that we value the AAA credit rating. We got them under Labor, 3 of them stable under Labor. We value it. We respect Standard & Poor's. We know that their opinions matter. And we are providing exactly the right kind of responsible economic management that the ratings agencies value.
S&P wrong, Prime Minister? Was the S&P wrong, Prime Minister, the report?
Bang, and then over there.
Prime Minister, you've criticised Peter Dutton for his cuts to the public service, and you say that will reduce services to Australians. But aren't you doing the same thing in a different way? Again, yesterday with your costings, you are cutting consultants. And I know that you're cutting consultants, he's cutting public services, but both of them are providing services to the public. So you're cutting services to the public as well, just a different way.
That's completely not right. What we are doing is cutting out some of the waste that's there. There were some 54,000 consultants over their period in office. And one of the things is I've met people, and I'm sure you have too, Mark, as a proud Canberran. You've met people who used to be, a DepSec of the department, earning, reasonable wages, $200,000 for a senior role, and now they're working half the time, getting paid double the amount when the coalition were in office, doing the same thing, providing advice as consultants for the big 4 firms in particular. It was just a complete collapse. We saw veterans, to be clear, 42,000 veterans were denied their entitlements. Not anything extra. Men and women who had served our nation in uniform, some of whom passed away before they got the entitlements that they had earned. You had Andrew Gee, you might remember, when he was Veterans Affairs Minister, had to threaten to resign before the 2022 budget, and they changed the budget speech, didn't change all the budget papers because it was a last-minute thing to try and keep him in the tent, because it was such an outrage what had occurred. Barnaby Joyce, as the Shadow Veterans Affairs Minister, in a rare public appearance during this election campaign, pointed out as well that that was a problem under the former government. So what we are doing, we are backing Australians. Peter Dutton is sacking Australians, and there will be less services, whether it's Services Australia, Australian Defence Force, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. NEMA, the National Emergency Management Agency, didn't exist under the former government. They're all gone, I assume. What happens with ASIO, with Operation Southern Borders, with the Australian Signals Directorate, these security agencies and defence represent more than 20,000 of the 68,000 public servants who are currently in Canberra. 41,000 of them are going to be sacked. That will have a devastating impact on Australian services. Jim?
Just very briefly, Mark, I mean, there's a very important difference You know, the savings that we are making build on the progress that Katie and the team have made over the first 3 years, saving billions of dollars, investing in the capacity of the Australian public service, but winding back some of these outrageous levels of spending on contractors and consultants. So we've shown an ability to do this. Now, we'll make these savings without coming after people or wages or programs. And here's another really important difference here. Peter Dutton wants to sack 41,000 people, with all of the consequence that will mean for veterans and people on pensions and payments. And that's the difference. Now, the reason that he has this policy is because he implements his policies directly from the United States. He wants the Americanisation of health, the public service and education. He draws his inspiration from the policies and politics and slogans of the United States. We believe in the capacity of the Australian public service. That's why we're investing in their capacity. And one of the reasons we've been able to do that in a budget which has improved substantially since we came to office is because we've been winding back things like expensive contractors and consultants, but also travel and hospitality and some of those other areas too.
ABC 9 Sky.
Prime Minister, Abrams tanks that your government pledged to Ukraine more than 6 months ago are still here in Australia. Is the United States delaying or blocking the transfer of these tanks, or is there another reason in Australia to blame for this?
Now, look, we're working on providing further support for Ukraine. We've contributed something like $1.5 billion. $1.3 billion of that has been direct military support. There are logistical issues, of course, in moving tanks aren't something you can put on a fax machine, and you need to make sure that you get it right. But we're continuing to back Ukraine. It's one of the big differences as well at this election campaign. There was bipartisanship on support for Ukraine. We have said we're prepared to, in a peace situation, to be part of a coalition of the willing, keeping the peace. Peter Dutton has opposed that. Andrew? Andrew?
Prime Minister, you've just heard from the Treasury says that you've improved the budget bottom line, but you've dipped into this magic pudding known as consultants to find $6.4 billion. Your Treasurer says it's to cut outrageous levels of spending on consultants. Two questions. What have you been doing for the past 3 years, if that's the case? And secondly, isn't this just cooking the books?
Oh, well, Andrew, I'm pleased you asked me about this because we've made billions of dollars of progress on this already. And the announcement that Katie and I made yesterday is about building on that progress. We have actually wound back substantially by billions of dollars spending on external labour and contractors and consultants. It's one of the ways that we've been able to invest in the capacity of the public service. When we came to office, the public service was hollowed out. Too much spending on contractors and consultants. We've been working on both of those challenges simultaneously. We've already made big savings in this area, and what we announced yesterday is to continue to build on, essentially, Katie's great work.
So, Treasurer, this is a classic budget fiddle, is it not?
Trudy.
You keep saying today, you've just referenced it before, you've turned around a $78 billion deficit the coalition gave to you. That was the forecast. The actual number when you came to power was $31 billion.
No,
should you be more honest about the figure?
That's not right. That was their forecast in their budget in March 2022.
And is the SNP wrong?
Their forecast was $78 billion when they came, when they handed down their budget in March 2022. Just like it was over $50 billion for the following year, just like it was almost double what it is this year.
So I just want to come back to what Trudy just said there. They forecast $78 billion. What was delivered at the end of that financial year was $32 billion. You came to office in May that year. Are you saying that you turned around the budget by $50 billion in 6 weeks?
I'm saying their forecast was $78 billion in the budget that they handed down when I was elected Prime Minister in May of 2022, on the 21st of May 2022. If you had have asked me what is the deficit for that year, the answer would have been $78 billion.
You touted on the radio this morning a reduction in migration by 31% under your government. Yeah. So can you give some clarity on what the government will do with the next migration program in this upcoming financial year? Will you consider more cuts or consider potentially a rise as well? And on housing, will you listen to industry demand and put tradespeople on the fast-track visa?
We are coming down. we are bringing down migration numbers. We actually introduced as well, of course, legislation to bring them down further, which was something that Peter Dutton opposed. And on the migration system as well, who knows what the opposition's position is? I mean, they have had, during this campaign, a shambles of a policy process where from day to day they haven't been able to keep the same policy positions. On migration, the day after the budget reply by the Leader of the Opposition, they had different positions between him. The Migration Shadow Minister, Dan Tehan, has had a different position, has had to be repudiated by the Leader of the Opposition. They need to say exactly what their position is on skilled migrants, on family reunion, on backpackers. We had just in the last week as well them saying there's going to be no cutback in backpackers. Where is it going to occur? We are getting on top of the mess that we inherited when it comes to migration.
Prime Minister, on climate policy, will you take a 2035 emissions target to the Saturday election? It doesn't sound like you've announced it just yet, but will you announce it if you're re-elected before November, before the COP summit in Brazil?
We have, under the legislation that was carried in the Parliament, we need to receive the advice from the Climate Change Authority. When we receive that, the government will consider it. It will be released publicly, and that is how we will set our 2035 target.
Prime Minister, throughout the election, Labor has been criticised for not doing enough to help struggling renters. I understand that you've got the 5% deposit scheme, and that's aimed at getting renters into the housing market. But what's your message to voters who are struggling with increasing rent rises and aren't in a position to afford a deposit?
That we have increased rental assistance by 45%. We are the first government since rental assistance came in to have consecutive real increases in rental assistance.
Prime Minister, the opposition has accused Labor of a spend-a-thon from December to now. What's your response to that?
We put out the costings yesterday. We put out the costings that were fully costed out there for all to see. Where's their costings? I mean, this mob, to be fair to them, it must be difficult for them to find costings because from day to day their policies change. How do you cost things when you are all over the shop on working from home, on migration, on housing policy, on so many areas, on climate? They're all over the shop. In some areas, they are on the same days giving different messages depending upon where people live. What we know is that they are combining with One Nation here and in other places, trying to do these preference deals. You have all sorts of strange occurrences with, a cult, the Exclusive Brethren, that they need to explain going forward. Where are all these people coming from? Why are they campaigning on booze? They don't vote, by the way, but they all of a sudden have found this enthusiasm in their hundreds to travel around the country to hand out how to vote. What's the quid pro quo there? What is going on there? We have, in the Labor Party, a clear, consistent position going forward of building Australia's future. People know on Saturday, if they want certainty in these turbulent times, that they'll get a tax cut, they get a 5% deposit for first home buyers, they'll get free TAFE, they'll get a 20% reduction in student debt, they'll get a future made in Australia, they will get a government that wants to seize the opportunities of action on climate change as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, live from Brisbane there, that was the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese speaking, and alongside the Treasurer Jim Chalmers there. So let's get more on this. Political correspondent Greg Jennett joins us